I agree. And I think, and I remember, and I kind of glossed over that year plus in between before I launched my business where I took a 9-to-5 job. I was working at night for my master's degree. I was trying different things that weren't feeling right. And that's what led me in the entrepreneurship direction. But I truly believe it's because I sat in silence with myself during that awful 9-to-5 job. I would sit for my hour lunch. I would listen to podcasts. I would almost talk to myself and say, okay, am I happy? Does this feel right? And we don't do that enough, Melissa. We just don't, especially as women, we're handling everything. We're go, go, go. But when you stop and check in with yourself, that's where the, epiphanies come. And that's where you start to say, oh yeah, this doesn't feel right. Let me lean into that. Or maybe I should try this. And I think that's so important to remind ourselves that we need to check in. You can't just go, go, go all the time because you won't, you might miss opportunities that are out there. And so that really helped me, I think, taking that introspective look and that time. And I've done that now more often over the past, 8-9 years of just, okay, so how does this feel? What's the next step? How am I doing? Because I think that easy check-in that we can all do, even if we put it on our calendar once a week, it's important because people don't often ask us how we're doing in a really meaningful way.
Hello and welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast today. I've got a new friend here with me and she is from our good friends at Podmatch. I just so appreciate, I've lost count of the incredible connections I've been able to make through this partnership. And Shannon Russell is another one of those special women that I get to share with you today. She describes herself as positive, ambitious, and adventurous. Shannon Russell, welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so happy to have you here. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with talk to me about prioritizing self-care in your life and what your journey has been for in that realm of the world.
Yeah. I mean, that is an ongoing kind of struggle, or I would say, or ongoing exercise of trying to figure out how to fit that in. I'm a mom of 2 boys and they are 10 and 13 now. So I have a little bit more time where I can step away. I don't have to be right there all the time. But yeah, I try to just really know when to close the laptop, walk away, say, okay, workday is done. Kids are home. Let's go be a mom now and really put everything into that. So I think that's important in self-care is just knowing when to close work off and turn on everything else. And then reading and writing are really my ways of just taking time for myself. Yeah. And just walking the dog and trying to do Pilates and just, move the body as well. But I think as long as you kind of focus on a couple of things that you enjoy, you're just better at life, right? You're better at all the aspects of what you need to do.
Yeah. You identify, and we'll talk about this at the end, but you identify those activities that nourish you. You make sure there's a room for them, but you also, I think you keep it simple. It doesn't have to be these big, elaborate things. It just needs to be those things that fill you up and you're intentional about getting them in. You mentioned the making sure you shut the laptop, kids are out of school, because you're also at an age with those kids where there's a lot happening after school a lot of times.
Right.
They're busier now. Yes, they can dress and feed themselves, but they're a lot more engaged in the world now too.
Yes.
So, which goes nicely into confidently setting boundaries. You've set that healthy boundary for yourself. But like, all right, it's time to switch gears. But you've also got those activities within there, the moving the body, with the Pilates or the walking or the getting outside, the reading the book. You've identified spaces and places that you can fill that time with nourishing activities as well. So that you can't, like you said, you can show up in all these places energized, focused, present, not distracted and feeling tired and overdrawn. So I love that you've made that clear line. When did you realize that was important for you?
I think it was probably just in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. So it wasn't like an always, but I think I just started seeing that as a business owner, it was taking up 24/7 of my life and my days. And that I was finding myself scrolling on my phone while on the couch watching a movie, like so many of us. And I said, you know what? The whole point of being in charge is that you're in charge of your schedule. So I started just, okay, well, maybe I'm sitting reading a book next to the kids if they are playing video games, but at least we're together and we're on the couch. So just making those little shifts of being more present and saying, this is why I got out of corporate. This is why I want to run my own business so I can control when my day starts and stops. And so, yeah, I wish I could say it's been like this for 20 years, but no, just the past few.
Yeah. You bring up a good point because I think, and I've run into this too. It's hard to break those corporate habits, even when you start doing your own thing. My husband has said to me so many times, you're in charge. You get to decide. You can shift that deadline. You get to set the parameters of what, the expectations are that you're not, so you don't have to subscribe to this script that you have been living by when you were working for someone else out in the corporate world. And it's such a hard habit to break because we've got these kind of predetermined expectations that have kind of been drilled into us over time. And so feeling like being able to release myself of like, you know what? I did work on Saturday and it is 2:00 on Monday and I am done with everything that needs to be tended to today. So it's okay. I don't have to just stay here till 5 to continue to do something to satisfy something that I don't need to live by anymore. So I think that can be a really like a shift too. Was it that way for you too?
It was, yes. And to also say like, you know what, I can block my calendar and not take client calls on days where I am running around with the kids for extra activities. So yeah. And also just knowing that there's going to be busier times, because obviously as business owners, I think, we know that we need to work to make money. And so there's going to be times where maybe we're in a bigger project or a launch. And so you can balance that with times that aren't as busy. But don't you think, Melissa, that it's hard as someone who might be a creative or owning their own business that you enjoy what you do? And so it doesn't feel like work. And so you could do it all day, right?
Yes.
That's the hard part.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that because that is 100%. And that's kind of what I lived by for a while. I was like, well, I love this. It doesn't feel like work.
Me too.
Until it got to a point where it stopped feeling that way. And that was my clue of like, ooh, wait a minute. I'm not as excited. I need to take a step back. Even the things that I love, I still need to fill my cup so I can continue to have the creative flow. So I can continue to make this and build this thing into what I know it can be from an authentic place, not a tired, worn out place, because too much of a good thing is still too much. And I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So
I agree.
And so those boundaries come into place there too.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like what you said too, is that, you can be really enjoying it, but the first sign of, ooh, this feels like work now is when you do need to step away. And even on those days, and we all have bad days, on those days where something isn't going right, or you're having, some struggle or friction at your work, to just say, it's not going to get solved in the next 5 minutes. So let me shut it down and switch your mind to something else. And that's where reading or writing has really helped me, because it's just, you get out of your own head and into something else. And that is, then you can come back to your work, maybe a half hour later or the next day, but you feel refreshed. It's kind of like that problem isn't as big when you do get that space.
Yes. Getting that space, allowing your mind to clear, allowing things to settle, kind of processing any emotions that it's bringing up, and being able to come back to it clear-minded, because it's just, and so I think it's just that remembering piece, because we talk to people about this all the time of like, of not wanting to get to a point where everything feels like, and there's always going to be parts of it. I mean, listen, when you have your own business and things you're doing, there's those administrative pieces that aren't part of the creative process that you love, that you need to do to maintain that. But even managing those in a way that allow you to, spend more time on the things you love, whatever that might look like. Like, is there somebody on your team that can take that on? Is it really as important as you're making it feel? You don't have to answer every email at that very moment every day. I've had to learn to give myself a break for that. Like, Mondays and Fridays are my days to answer these emails and address these questions. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those are my creative days. Things, those are not the days. And so that's really helped me too. And no one's head is blown up because, unless there's a timeline attached, but no one's head's blown up if that email that came in on Tuesday got answered on Friday morning.
Nope, not at all. You're absolutely right. That is a good boundary. That's a great boundary to set.
Yeah. So just finding those things that fit for you so it continues to feel like the thing that you love and want to be engaged in. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So good. So good. So talk to me about that connection between your emotional, mental, physical, spiritual health. You made a shift a few years ago. And so talk to me about what led to that decision and also these connections that you see in these different spaces of our health that need to be tended to.
Well, yeah, I left my career of 16 years in television to launch into entrepreneurship. And I opened my first business, and there was a lot to learn everything you just mentioned, right? Just saying, wow, instead of having a commute into Manhattan and commuting back and all that stress and the long hours, I'm working from home, building a business, which is a different level of stress, but I wasn't getting the physical exercise that I was of walking all those city avenues and blocks. And so it was like shifting the who am I with your identity stress, not having the socialization that you had. So there was a lot to figure out, and it took time to really get into the zone. And then in building that business, and I think it took a good year plus for me to say, ooh, this business is actually doing well. And it's, growing, and I'm seeing success, and I'm putting money into my bank account. And that's when I started really excelling and feeling in the zone, because I felt like I was still working just as much, but the stress level was so different because I was controlling the clock. I was home near the kids. There was just a different level, and there was a really great level of pride knowing that I was able to go from here to there and find that peace and flexibility and freedom and quote unquote success that I wasn't sure while I was going through the motions if it was going to come to play. But it did. And that made me launch into another business with my coaching. And I think even now, I sold my first business last year in 2024 successfully. So someone else is running that now, which is wonderful. And now I'm just in my business coaching business, and it feels so nice. It feels like where I'm supposed to be, helping the people that I'm supposed to be helping. And yes, there's a little bit more pressure because it's like, okay, I've got to keep this going, and I've got to get those new clients and do all that, but it's on my watch. And if I feel like I'm living in my own skin now, because everything is coming into place, like we were talking about, like the emotional, the mental, the physical, it's all just feeling right. Yeah. And things felt very stressful and out of control, maybe 9 years ago. So I think it's, it's funny to be able to look at it now and be like, wow, I'm a very different person. And it feels better.
Yeah. I think that ability to trust and also honoring the fact that there's going to be an in-between. Like you sensed a need to make that shift, and you made that shift. But within the shift, and I think sometimes we will panic because in the shift, all of a sudden things are still feeling out of sorts. It's a different kind of stress, like you said. It's a different kind of pressure that we put on ourselves to build, but also know that we need to be here. And so sometimes we kind of get panicky. It's like, give it time, let it, give it time to settle in, give it yourself time to recalibrate. And as you mentioned, there's so many things you don't take into consideration. I mean, New York City blocks are long blocks, man. You can get some steps in and not even know it. Like, it's not even part of your intentional workout that day. It's just part of, I got to get to the train station, get off the train, walk to my building, there's a lot of
You're hustling.
You're hustling. And you've gotten 5,000 to 10,000 steps in without even blinking an eye. And so all of a sudden, when you go from your bedroom to your living room to your office, we're like, that was like 100 steps. Okay. So, yeah. So you were kind of refiguring because that was something that movement was already built into your day. So even like trying to figure that part out, those things that we don't think about, but being patient, trusting yourself, trusting the process. Look at where you are 9 years later and your ability to do that. I think it's so important for women to hear that because it is unique for us. And we're seeing more shared responsibilities with partners than we used to. It's not as wild to hear about one partner, staying home. If you're married to a man or a partner with a man, they might actually be the one working from home, or maybe both of you are. That is much more common these days than it was 10, 15, 20 plus years ago. However, at the end of the day, I feel like it's still a lot of the times, and we're the ones, if you've given birth to children, there's that connection. There's just something about being a mom I've raised 3 daughters and they're grown now, but that you're torn. I've done the whole working, taking time off, working again thing. And there's that pull of wanting to like satisfy these different portions of your life. So but trusting that intuition, trusting that process and giving yourself the time and patience. And now you're able to, you feel that, you honor that, you're listening to that, but you gave it the time. You didn't panic. You didn't get in a hurry. And I think that's a really important part to talk about.
Well, and I agree. And I think, and I remember, and I kind of glossed over that year plus in between before I launched my business where I took a 9-to-5 job. I was working at night for my master's degree. I was trying different things that weren't feeling right. And that's what led me in the entrepreneurship direction. But I truly believe it's because I sat in silence with myself during that awful 9-to-5 job. I would sit for my hour lunch. I would listen to podcasts. I would almost talk to myself and say, okay, am I happy? Does this feel right? And we don't do that enough, Melissa. We just don't, especially as women, we're handling everything. We're go, go, go. But when you stop and check in with yourself, that's where the epiphanies come. And that's where you start to say, oh yeah, this doesn't feel right. Let me lean into that. Or maybe I should try this. And I think that's so important to remind ourselves that we need to check in. You can't just go, go, go all the time because you won't, you might miss opportunities that are out there. And so that really helped me, I think, taking that introspective look and that time. And I've done that now more often over the past, 8-9 years of just, okay, so how does this feel? What's the next step? How am I doing? Because I think that easy check-in that we can all do, even if you put it on our calendar once a week, it's important because people don't often ask us how we're doing. Yeah. In a really meaningful way.
Right. Like they might ask, but they're not actually expecting or wanting the actual answer to that question. And we had a discussion with a podcast guest a while back where the challenge for that episode, the way to engage was don't ask the question unless you're really intentional and want the answer. And when someone asks you, be intentional about answering honestly. And if you're not sure they want the honest answer, like, do you really want to know how I'm feeling or do you want to just hear that I'm okay? And being clear about that. And so we can open the doors to really speak truth to how we feel. I think that's so important. And this goes nicely into through this process of honoring yourself. You're now in a position where you're really able to show up unapologetically supporting yourself, but you're also now supporting other women in that process. You've been able to take these things that you've learned and utilize them. Talk to me about first the decision to do that and when in deciding to make that transition. And second, I think so many times as women, and you touched on this already, we get into a rut of like, well, I've got to save this job. It pays. It provides insurance. It's just what it is. I'm just going to gut it out until the kids leave for college and then I'll figure something out. And it's that gutting it out that takes the toll. And it's but it's also that fear. Like we get comfortable and and the fear of trying something different and whether it's going to work or not. And the gamble within that, which requires a lot of communication in your family and with your partner. Me doing what I'm doing right now has required a lot of communication with my husband when I made that transition from that steady income to this passion project, which now I am also having business pieces added to it. But that's all a constant communication. So it's not something you just spring into, but you're now able to guide women through that too. So A, talk to me about that decision to do that. And B, how you help women get over the hump of that fear that they just need to stay in the comfort, even though they're not enjoying it and they're not thriving.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my experience of figuring it out and then launching into my first business, which was a franchise, I had that fear and I was scared and I was learning. And I think I had to learn that it wasn't going to happen overnight, the success that I was thinking would happen. But then when I did feel like, wow, this is actually going well, and I've hired a team and we're making these partnerships and money's coming in, I said, ooh, this is exciting. I'm proud of myself and I want to do it again. And right around that time, I had a lot of customers who would ask me like, oh, how long have you been doing this? And were you a teacher before? Because my first business was teaching STEM education to kids. And I'd say, actually, I'm a television producer before this. And it would spark these conversations and they'd say, oh my goodness, I don't want to commute from Manhattan. And can you help me figure out what else I can do? I want to launch a business. And so I saw that there was a need. When this conversation was happening over and over again, I said, you know what? I'm going to start a coaching business and I'm going to help people, because when I was going through it, I truly was alone. My husband is a television producer, all my friends. So when I decided to leave, it was like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? And so I felt like I was struggling. There was just a lot going on that I was doing solo. And I wanted to be that hand that could hold someone from that thought to actually taking action. And so that's where it started. And I ran both businesses together for many years before selling the first. But I saw, and it happened organically, I got a lot of clients that were local that knew I had this other successful business. So I had these clients, and then, my clients grew, but it was nice to see, okay, well, what do you want to do? What's holding you back? And you nailed it, because the number one thing is, well, actually, one thing I always hear is, well, doesn't everyone hate their job?
Wow.
Yeah. And whenever I mention that to people, they're always like, their jaw drops, because that's so sad, right? Like, you don't want to be the one that's lumped into the people who don't like their job. And yes, there's plenty of people who don't, but what can you do to make it better? Or can you shift, or can you move to a different department, or work different hours? Like, there's always a way to make it just a little bit better for you and your well-being.
Yeah.
But then it's also the whole, well, you know what? I want to do this, and I really think I could, but I'm going to stay and wait for the kids to be out of the house, or retirement, or this perfect time. And so I started using those excuses in my strategies and what I teach, and saying, okay, I understand. I've been there. Let's make it a really methodical roadmap. Really methodical, strategic way that you can get from here to there, where you're not causing that chaos in your family. Now, what do you think? And then they say, well, okay. Because I think it's that fear as a woman, as a mom, that we're going to leave everyone in a lurch, and we're not going to be able to, right?
Yes.
And it's like, no, you can figure out the ways to do that, and look at your finances. Maybe you have to work for 6 more months. Maybe you started on the side. And that's been really fun, to meet women where they are and make that plan and work with them and hold their hand. Because a lot of times there's partners who aren't very supportive, or friends and family, or just being afraid of what other people, even on social media, will think if you say, oh, I'm starting a jewelry business, or I'm doing this, so it's that mindset work too. So just being able to be that person that they can come to, and I can say, no, it's not crazy, and you can do that, and let's figure out how to get you there, has been really rewarding. I should say, I really have enjoyed and do enjoy just getting to be a part of someone's story, their second act story. If you will.
I love that. Yeah. Which we'll get to that. The second act there's meaning to that there. We'll talk about that before we wrap up today. But I think too, you've laid out really well. Things really organically came to be for you. You weren't chasing something or forcing something. And I think that's really important too. And this keeps coming up. My friend Rachel Lavin pointed this out on a panel we were on together a few weeks ago. And she's like, stop chasing. I'm like, you know what? That's great for our listeners to hear. I needed to hear that today. I needed to. And so even in having these conversations with women, as I as I build what I'm doing here, I think we all at the times need to be reminded to stop chasing and allow things to unfold organically. And they will, as long as you just keep taking the steps forward, honoring yourself, honoring this thing that you're building in a way that you're trusting that tuition, and you were able to do that. And I think that's such an important piece, and you were able to make it palpable for people. And especially if they're getting pushback, you're going home, or like, I'm not blowing up the whole thing here.
Right.
There's a plan. And just, if you can trust me in this plan, then I think that we can make this work in a way that's going to be good for all of us. Because I think too, what doesn't come into consideration is if we're staying in spaces and places that are draining our energy, we are not able to show up well for anybody in our lives. We're irritable, we're tired, we're worn out, we're not present. The Sunday scaries can be the Sunday through Thursday scaries. I mean, honestly. And then that impacts how you are able to show up for your family and your partner and your neighbors and your community spaces as well. So, I mean, when you can bring that piece of the conversation of like, I don't want to just impact my day to day where I'm showing up. I want to impact how I'm showing up authentic to me and for you all. I mean, how do you want to remember me? Do you want to remember me as just tired and worn and ragged? Or do you want to remember me making choices that I know are not only going to be healthy for me, but healthy for all of us? And I think that's such a great thing for our kids to see. It's good for our kids to see us take risks and bet on ourselves, because that sends them the message that they can do that too. And you never want your kid to feel like you stayed in something miserable to support them or what, I think it's just very, and kids pick up on what they see. You can say all you want to say till the cows come home, but they pick up on what they see and what they feel and experience from you too. So I think that's a huge part of it.
Melissa, you just made something that just happened a couple of days ago pop into my head that my dad had called and he said, I listened to your podcast this week. And I guess I said something on the podcast about you want to work in a career where you would do it for no money. And my 13-year-old said to me, well, Mom, you like what you're doing, right? Even if you didn't get paid. And I said, yes. He's like, you don't miss the other business or you don't miss anything. I'm like, no. And he's like, okay, good, because I want you to be happy. And that's so funny because it was special in the time, but I actually kind of forgot that he said that until just now. And that is a perfect example of what you said, of they're watching. And I want them to also be able to say, you don't have to choose something at 20 and stay with it forever. You can do multiple things and have multiple adventures because you get this one life. So why not?
Yeah.
So I think that's a good lesson for our kids as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. And that goes nicely into coming back to our why and our values and everything we do. You've done that. Talk to me about that realization and how this has impacted the choices you've made.
Well, the why, I think, is everything. Once you can nail that down. And that was something that I had been figuring out. I had my first son. We were in Los Angeles. And then 3 years later, we had moved to the East Coast and I was pregnant with my second son. And I had known those 3 years that, I don't think I can do TV much longer. It's just too many long hours.
Very demanding.
And it was, and the wheels were turning. But when I was 8 months pregnant, the specific moment I was running through the Times Square subway station in heels, trying to get the bus to go to daycare. And I had this moment of, this is not worth it. And my why is the kids. I wanted to be that present mom who could pick up from the bus stop and be there as a class parent and do all of those things. And it was in that moment where the celebrity of it all and the excitement of this dream career of mine, I could check the box, I could celebrate it and say, now what is the next adventure? And that became my why, right? Like I wanted to be present with them and build a career around that. And I think that is something I will never, ever regret. And I was able to do it. It wasn't simple. Again, it took things, figuring out conversations, all the things, but that was the why. And I say to my clients too, is like, if you're focused on the why, everything will fall into place, because you'll get those moments of, well, should I do this? Should I go back to that? What's comfortable? But you go back to that why and you just keep going. And I think that's such a huge lesson and very valuable for for people to be able to figure out what their why is.
Yeah.
And then just keep going, moving towards that.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. And that leads nicely into living out of our own expectations versus others' expectations and making sure that why is your why. Those values are your values. Those expectations are your expectations. I mean, coming from the world of television, there's a lot of glamour and celebrity and stature and all those things that come with that. And so you talked about earlier how people were just like, she's doing what? And so being able to release that, I'm like, I had my day in the sun. And who knows, maybe someday it'll manifest itself in a different way. But that's not going to honor me if I continue down that road. And so I'm going to shift this narrative. But I think it's such an important piece of when we are living out of our own expectations, our own values, our own why, we can set our own healthy boundaries, which then that all evolves into our self-care. Those are all components of our self-care. Those are all components of how we care for us. So talk to me about what it's been like to be able to not only live out, but when you make those shifts, you got to communicate to people. I'm shifting out of this. This is a choice I have made for myself, for my family. This is this new adventure that I'm going to go into. Talk to me about that communication piece, because that's such an important piece too.
You're right. And I think I started when I saw some reactions from family and friends when I decided to leave television. I decided to say, okay, thank you so much, and put that off to the side. And I've always been like a self-aware person. I think that's helped me a little bit, but I just knew, going back to the why, well, I'm going to try this and it's got to work. And if not, of course, I can always go back. But I think it's that helped me. I think those initial shocks and awes from people helped me realize, okay, well, might be the reaction of other people. And so when I first posted about this on social media, building my social pages for my businesses, it was, this is what I'm doing. And I'm actually using all of my skills as a producer to bring into produce and build this new life in this business. And I think it was just put it out there. And I worried about what people thought, of course, like in the back of my mind, but I never let it show. Yeah. And I'm telling you, when that first message came in, I don't know how many years later it was, definitely since I've launched my coaching business, people coming out of the woodworks of like, can you help me? Like, I'm ready to leave entertainment. Can you help me? And, I've been watching your journey, and you're like, wow, I didn't even know this person from 20 years ago had been watching what I'm doing. Yeah. But I think because I wasn't afraid to put it out there and talk about it, that they saw that and there was something that made them go, oh, okay, if she can do it, then I can do it. And that's what I've wanted, especially since launching my coaching business, just to be able to say, other people can do it and you can too. Yeah. So I think just communicating that with no hesitation. Like when you go out, and I don't say if somebody asks me, I'm a mom, always comes up pretty much first, but then I'll say, oh, I'm a business coach, but I won't say I'm a television producer, but you know what? I still am. Like, you're still on those past titles.
Right. They're still part of who you have become. Yeah.
You get to say who you are when you're meeting someone at a networking event.
Absolutely. Yeah. And where it applies, because some things will come up. It's like we talked about with, earlier on when I had you identify your character traits, the different things show up at different times in different seasons. And so I always get fresh answers from people on that because of where they might be today versus where they were 3 or 4 months ago, 6 years ago, whatever it is. So I think it's so important to remember that. And also too, I think, so many times this can be a real trick, especially when we've been in these higher profile positions of, it's a kind of a checkpoint to make sure your identity isn't wrapped up in that. And so sometimes that can be hard for people to walk away from because it forces you into, and it goes nicely into this next talking point of accepting the layered aspects of ourselves, all the pieces and parts of who we are that make up who we are as a person, not what we do, but who we are. And then within that, all the roles and titles we have along the way, all of a sudden there can be that sense of loss. It's like, okay, that's when I work with women one-on-one and in groups, we start with the layers. We start here first. This is the first part of the conversation because it's like, you got to get a grasp on this first. This will help you see your value. This will help you see your whole person. So then when I ask you the next question of identifying your character traits and describing who you are, you will have done the layers work and you'll be able to actually describe who you are, not with your roles and titles, but with who you are as a person. And then that will make you, help you to see your value, and that is your foundation. And so talk to me about the importance of that piece of this, allowing you to move forward personally, but also helping others to do so as well.
Yeah, it was, I think, taking that solace and knowing that I'm still a producer. And I joke that if Oprah called tomorrow, I'd go back to work, So it's knowing, I think everyone it feels a little bit better. Their shoulders drop when they say, oh yeah, you're right. I can still do accounting. I can still go back to that retail sales job, whatever it is. So it's still a part of you. And what I love is, like you were saying, to talk about the whole person and then take that and help that shape your, what I call a career story to get you to where you are now. So why are you the perfect person to create this business or start this new thing or write this book? Because you have done all of this. So let's craft it. Let's figure out that thread and come up with it. So to use myself as an example, my business was Second Act, and it was based on, the acts in television. So I really took that and I said, I'm going to start producing this business. And now I'm going to produce people's lives with them as they create their second act. So it just all kind of flows together with my career story. And anyone can do that too, once they've gone through the layers, as you mentioned. And then it's fun to kind of craft that new elevator pitch or that new, synopsis or summary of who you are in the present tense of what you're building and what you're going into. And it's so fun. It's exciting to see yourself in that new way. And I think it leads to your confidence and your excitement as you take that next step forward. Don't you?
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. 1,000%. And it allows you to tap into all of who you are. And I think that's so many times we miss the pieces of all that we have within us. It's all here. It's just waiting for us to tap into it and trust it. Talk to me too about, how did you, in that first business, how did you choose the STEM route, and how did you communicate to people the connection and why it is they should work with you? I love, you talked to me about this when we had our meeting, but I want our listeners to hear this.
Well, it was the fact that I had a 3-year-old and a newborn, and the 3-year-old, the only time he would sit still is if he was building with Lego or Magnetiles or anything that he could create something with his hands and his mind. And I really was intrigued with that. And at the same time, when I was grasping at straws, trying to figure out what to do, I was working online towards a master's in education. But I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. And so I think there was something between all of that. I said, what if I create a STEM center for children where they can think like engineers and start building and creating and really dive into that? And so that was where the inspiration came from. And then I just looked and I found a franchise that was already doing what I wanted to do. So it was the next step. And then I just said, you know what? I've produced these multi-million-dollar productions and budgets and hired and made partnerships and all of that. I can do that to take this business idea and build it and promote it in my community where no one's heard of it. So it's kind of like taking that idea and bringing it to the screen. I was taking this idea and bringing it out to the community. And that was a really fun challenge for me, still being able to use the creative side. It worked really well. So it was a very weird segue to get me there, but you never know. As long as it goes back to keeping your eyes open and being open to those opportunities and listening and having those conversations with yourself to just say, you know what, this feels right. Let's go. Let's see.
I wanted you to share that because I wanted women to be able to have a visual of how this can work. You're sitting there observing your own children and observing this thing that one of your kiddos loved. And you were able to connect the dots between the strengths that you already knew you had, the experience you already knew you had, this new creative space where you could bring these things together. But it was all very organic. It wasn't forced. And so I think it's, again, back to that not chasing, but being very aware and paying attention to the things that are around you. And because of that, you were able to give those examples to the people you work with today when they're looking for that second act, that opportunity. It's just such a great example of how you can lay it out in such a palpable way. Thank you so much for sharing that. In Within Out, F.E.E.L, finding empowerment, embracing layers, which is what you are doing. Talk to me about the impact that has had on your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people.
Ooh, I think I love that question. I think it's given me such confidence to, to, I guess, care what I think about what I'm doing more than anyone else. Just having that confidence within myself to say, yeah, I'm going to try this because I'm not a person who can sit still. I'm always going on to the next project or adventure. And so I think it's just being really confident in the decisions that I make. And I might not have been that confident, in my early 30s when I was running around LA or New York. It was a different kind of confidence. But I think it's because I've been able to build two businesses and see the impact it's had, whether on children or women, and in my community and online. It's been nice to see. And of course, I'm nowhere near done. I'm just still building, but it's nice to feel that confidence and self-awareness again, that I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right space. And I think that's how it feels.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So good. All right. As we wind down here, tell me 5 activities that nourish you.
Ooh, sitting on the couch with the kids, no matter what. Like, I just love our time, watching movies, TV, walking my dog, whether we're at the park or just around the neighborhood. That's just a time that I just love, whether I'm walking with the family or by myself with my earbuds. Definitely reading, because I love just diving into someone else's world. And I recently stopped reading business self-help empowerment books because I wanted to escape. And I felt like every time I read one of those books, I was getting back into the business. So now I'm really reading thrillers and mysteries and just diving into that world. And music, I'm a big music person. So just putting on my Spotify playlist and listening to music that I loved in my 20s and growing up. And then really writing. I recently wrote a book, and through that process, I realized how much writing became a hobby. So I think I enjoy, and my kids are at the age where I can say, I'm going to take 30 minutes. I'm going to go write. And they understand what I'm doing, and just to get alone with my thoughts. And I think writing's like a puzzle, which I really like, to be able to just take these ideas and figure out where to put them. But those are probably the 5 things that give me joy.
That. Oh, so good. All right. And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh, 5 words. I'd say empowered, authentic, overjoyed, ambitious, and healthy.
Good. All right. Shannon, tell people where they can find you and follow you. This will also be on our website on embracinglayers.com on the resources page, but share with listeners right now all those places and spaces they can follow you, and work with you.
Sure. You can go to secondactsuccess.co. That's my website, and you'll have links to my new book, which is called Start Your Second Act, my podcasts, free resources, how to work with me, all of that good stuff. So secondactsuccess.co.
Okay, great. And like you said, that will be on our website. So don't worry, listeners, you'll be able to access that. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Oh, I just say, give yourself grace, because as you move through the day, whether you're making a huge change or not, give yourself grace and know that you're worthy to live the life that you want to live, that gives you that fulfillment, because at the end of the day, you don't want to have any regrets. And we get this one beautiful life to live. So live it to the fullest.
Yeah. So good. All right. Thanks so much for being with me today, Shannon. I appreciate you so much, how you show up in the world, the way you support others in these journeys that are possible for them to live their most authentic lives in a way that's honoring to them and their families. I think it's just so important. Like you said, we get this one life, and to be able to live it the way we were designed to, that feels good to us. And you've trusted yourself through that process, and you're helping others to do that now. I think it's so important, so powerful. So thank you so much for that, and for sharing these resources with us. Listeners, it's all right there. Take what's that next thing for you that's going to help you feel aligned with you. Now, think about that today, and take good care of yourselves. Thanks so much for being with us today on the F.E.E.L Podcast. We hope you join us next time. Have a great rest of your day. Hello, and thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the F.E.E.L Podcast. If you would like more information on how you can apply these talking points that I share with our guests in each episode to your own life, really utilize this F.E.E.L framework, go to embracinglayers.com, fill out our contact form, and let's set up a free 30-minute consultation to talk about how you can start living your most authentic, organic, healthy, feel fueled life. Thanks again for being with us today. We'll be back to you soon with another episode here on the F.E.E.L Podcast.